gathered here today to talk about...
We're here to talk about gaming.
Gaming.
A special Counter-Strike Global Offensive.
Yes.
We have an idea. The gaming culture has something in common.
Yes.
Essentially, the culture exists within gaming, and that there is a connection between these, and that students actually is part of a culture without knowing.
We chose this also because it has risen here in the few recent years about in the Danish media. It has risen as some bit of a popular, mostly the most, what I call the most popular game, I would say, in Denmark at the moment.
And we know this game, so we know the culture very well. So from personal experience, we can look at a culture perspective within the game. And I've specifically chosen to look at Hofstede's onion diagram. I will just look it up right here. So how does Counter-Strike fit into this onion diagram? What are the symbols within Counter-Strike? What symbolizes Counter-Strike to you?
So I would say the symbol of Counter-Strike would be, I don't know if this is a bit meta, but the way of teamworking. This symbol to see someone working together, maybe. Which is, I would say, the outer layer of Counter-Strike would also maybe just be the definition of gaming, or this being together online.
Yes.
Yeah, teamworking. The next part of this onion is the heroes, right?
Yeah.
And what would you see as?
Well, I think the reason why the culture is very clear in this game is because now that it's risen in popularity, we actually have heroes. We have younger kids who are studying and actually looking up to these players that are playing within TV competitions and such. So we have Astralis in Denmark, huge winning Counter-Strike team.
Yeah, it's very rare that we see a Danish team having only Danish players.
Yes.
And it's very common to see people on the streets wearing the black cap with the Astralis symbol and stuff. So it's definitely risen in popularity.
And even that, I mean, we can argue. I think Hofstede talks about this. Byron does as well. This idea that a culture is a part. I think it's actually Hofstede's pyramid, where it becomes a culture changes your personality, but it comes from human nature. So we are focusing here on merchandise from these heroes.
Yeah.
And then a person is then saying, well, this culture is part of my personality, so I'm willing to portray this with whatever I'm wearing.
Yeah, with the personal.
And that's how they show.
Yeah.
But the next up is rituals. What are some rituals that Counter-Strike has?
That's a good question.
I agree. I think this is the hardest one, I think, as well.
Yeah, because rituals, that could be, I would say, in a religious term, is easy to point out.
We pray.
Yeah.
And how do we pray?
Yeah.
What do we eat? Do we have holidays? All these things.
Yeah. We don't pray with CSGO. But yeah, what do we do?
Some rituals I would point out.
Yeah.
Could maybe be typing GG when a game is over, saying good game.
Yeah, GL, HF.
Yeah, good luck, have fun.
Yeah.
Yes, a very common one. These are terms that are general in gaming, especially in the competitive games, that has just appeared out from the culture. The game has never told you to say good luck, have fun to the other team, or saying good game or bad game. But these are both rituals. And one of the few, trash talking, is creating a culture where if you are from another culture than this and you're watching this, you have a very different view on trash talking. If I'm playing with my friends and I know that he is good and we are friends, and he misses a clean shot, he should have killed the guy in front of him, and he didn't, and I will tell him, oops, and I will tell him, wow, you suck.
Yeah.
Another person who is not within this gaming community and not part of the culture can maybe see this and go, wow, that was really toxic and that was really
get a negative reaction.
Yes, it sounds like it's very negative. But for him and I, we're just joking. Because I know that he knows that he's better, I know that he's better. So for him to fail is just a funny moment that we are laughing and having fun about within the game. But from a culture that is outside the gaming culture of Counter-Strike, this could be seen as very different.
When we talk about this as a conversation, if you have a conversation in game, this is also where the typical culture would arise.
Yes.
Because it's a conversation between two people or 5 people on a team, and this is where you'll find out the sarcasm, maybe the faults of another player and such. But yeah, so the symbols, heroes, and rituals, of course, in the onion diagram, that's the values.
Yes.
They all circulate.
I think a clean value for most players are have fun and try your best.
The onion diagram we just talked about this is our viewpoint.
Yeah.
Of the diagram, because there are definitely people who would view this differently. And talk about the trash talking as maybe a high point, as this is the rituals, and maybe also their heroes are maybe the trash talkers on live streams and such, because that's another way to see it, another way to play. Because I read a lot about Byron, and he mentions mostly that the cultures they arise between persons. They arise between actually different cultures or different backgrounds.
From Hofstede, most of what he focuses on is that culture is something that is ever changing. It comes from human nature and then becomes a part of you that changes your personality. This means that every culture that you have, a human nature, is basically you're part of a community. The community has values, it has heroes, it has rituals, it has symbols. And these things is a culture. That culture is then what you learn, and specific to this group and this category. This is specifically talking about the pyramid. And then becomes part of your personality because it's inherent and it's learned by you. And then it's now specific to your person. I don't remember if it was Byron or Hofstede or someone else actually, that were discussing whether or not culture is constantly changing and culture is something you have, or is it something you decide?
Oh, I remember that as a little code. But
this is a huge discussion because basically, are you part of a culture, whether or not you want to be, or can you decide that you're a part of a culture? Because can I be part of a gaming culture if I don't actually play video games?
That's a good question, because with the technology we have today, you could also follow a gamer on a live stream, which is, of course, it's live. You are sitting with a lot of other people. You are hearing the gamer talk, seeing the gamer game or play in a game. But of course, are you then a part of the culture?
Yeah.
Because you watch this, or do you actually understand what's happening?
Because Byron talks about these 3 stages that we are actually going to use for our assignment.
It's preparatory, fieldwork, and follow-up phase.
Yes. And what's interesting here is that if you want to be if you decide you're a part of a culture, but you don't actually partake in any of the rituals, you don't partake in the practices that there are, you aren't actually doing fieldwork. You can be part of the preparatory, you can be part of an afterthought, but it's hard to be part of an afterthought if you haven't done the fieldwork. So not gaming basically means it's tough to be a part of a gaming culture if you don't actually game. But we see it in other cultures such as sports. Many people find them being a part of a sports culture, even though they never actually do any sports. Just being a viewer is enough.
Yeah, and that's definitely a thing. I would say most of the sports I enjoy seeing.
This directly relates to our assignments because we know that some of these kids don't want to be part of the fieldwork. But if they don't want to be part of it, can they actually analyze and be part of the follow-up?
We of course talk a lot about this fieldwork because we want to use in our assignment we want to use what Byron says as a study visit or exchange program. We want to use it as a study visit or exchange in that matter that we want to take people and exchange their cultures in the game. inside the gaming world. So that's why we want to focus on the preparatory fieldwork and follow-up phase.
I think what we could look at also is the fact that some of these people that we have know about Counter-Strike, they know about the gaming, they're part of the gaming culture. That means that they have some prerequisites to what Counter-Strike is. And because of that, they can actually introduce other pupils to their culture. And by that, they can exchange, this is just their part to say, come into my culture, welcome, try it out, see how it is, and then I'll tell you about it. I'll tell you about what we do, I'll tell you about the rituals, I'll tell you about some of our heroes, I can tell you about what our values are.
And this assignment that we want to make to our pupils, this can also compares to the curriculum, is in which every school or every class has to follow at some point. And in the curriculum, you learn about themes, you learn about different ways of interacting with genders, with age, in regions. This is where you also learn about the religion. It could be about racism as well, as Byron mentions. And I would say 4 out of 5 of these, which I've just mentioned, is definitely something that you will find in a CSGO
Which are these 4? Which one do you not see as part of it?
So I would definitely say religion. Byron mentions these 5, and it's gender, age, region, religion, and racism, as just some general themes.
Yes.
And it's definitely gender, age, region, and racism. And we need to do 3 phases, and the phases are the preparatory phase.
That's phase 1.
That's phase 1. Fieldwork phase as phase 2, and the follow-up phase as a phase 3.
Yes.
The preparatory phase, they have to maybe write down their prejudice thoughts about the game. There will definitely be people the pupils who has been gaming this, but we talked about that maybe half of these would have
they probably know what it is.
Yes.
They just have no experience with it.
No. And in the fieldwork phase, this is where we want to put the pupil in the context of the gaming culture.
Yeah, this is the experimental phase. You
Yes.
need to try and be part of a culture that you are not, or are already, and teach others what is this culture.
So this would basically be a 5 versus 5 situation. We could do it as we have the pro gamers who definitely have tried the game before. They'll try to help the gamers which are not that competitive minded or just not as good.
We could possibly put one of each in every group and then say, well, your job is now to teach them. You are not playing, you are teaching. Our thought was they could put a headset on. You could have basically 5 pupils against 5 pupils who doesn't have a lot of experience with Counter-Strike, maybe some, but not a lot. And then have them being coached by a person who knows a lot about it. And if there are none of these, well, that's just perfect, because if no one has tried it, then we can try it and say, you just play it, and let's test it out, let's see how it functions, and we'll deal with it in the follow-up phase. So what is the follow-up phase after that?
Yeah.
Okay.
So the follow-up phase. This is where the pupils will reflect on their individual or their expectations they had, what they endured under this fieldwork phase, and afterwards they would take this experience they had from the fieldwork and they'll try to compare it, analyze it, and so as Byron says it, they will conceptualize what they have experienced, and this could maybe be in a discussion, a dialogue between the fieldwork players and also the non-players, because we talked about there's probably a lot of people who won't want to participate in this. And what should the non-participants do in this fieldwork phase?
Well, our idea was that they should basically analyze, and this is where Hofstede basically comes in. Because Hofstadter is very analytical, and basically it's saying is that in a culture you are who you are. So if they are outside watching these people engage in a culture that they don't actually know, then our hope is that they can analyze on them and say, well, how are these cultural, for example, the onion diagram, how are these portrayed here? What happens? What is the practice that they do? What do they keep referring to? What are they talking about? How do they talk to each other? They can analyze these people playing, and then afterwards, in their afterthought or in their follow-up phase, they could then discuss their analytical results with the ones who has actually played and have been part of this field work. This way, we're getting a research and we're getting a test base. We're having basically the class cut into two.
Yeah.
And we can get both Byram's thoughts while experiencing it, and we get a more Hofstadter approach where you are more analytical and analyzing the culture from an outside perspective.